Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to take a little bit of time here to make another video, this time with amplitude and period changes involved, okay? So we're going to be graphing those sine and cosine waves, just like we were graphing the other day, okay? So just like that, except we're going to be taking a look at what do we do in amplitude and period changes. So we're just going to do two examples, and then there's basically two more examples you can watch. So we need to find the amplitude and period and increment for each function, then graph it, label it, that sort of thing. So here's what we have. We have f of x equals 3 cosine pi x. So ladies and gentlemen, one more time to kind of highlight the big ideas. What we're talking about here is this amplitude is always in front of the sine or cosine. So what's in front of that? A 3. So the amplitude of this wave will be a 3. So that means it's going to have a maximum height or maximum depth underneath of 3. The period comes from 2 pi divided by b, and those were in our notes from the day before. So the b value is always in front of that x. So this one is 2 pi divided by the b value would be pi. So we'll place that in there, and now notice what simplifies. Pi divided by pi is 2. Now the increment comes from the period. This period value gets divided by 4 to find the increment. We're saying we want to watch it for a period of 2 because that's how long it's going to take for the wave to cycle back. But we need to split that up into 4 equal parts so we can number our axes. So we're going to split that up. 2 divided by 4 is 1/2, so we're going to count by 1/2. So now that we've filled in those major 3 blanks there, now we can go ahead and start a sketch. So sketch this in your notes. You can use your grid lines there to help you out. This is our x-axis and y-axis. Notice that the y, the amplitude is going to go all the way up to 3. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to label that with a 3 because you never know. Somebody could have counted by 5s or something. And this one is -1, -2, -3. So now that's going to be that maximum height of that wave. Then we're going to go ahead and label the x-axis according to the increments. We have to label by 1/2. So we're going to go 1/2. The next one would be 2/2, which is 1. The next one would be 3/2, which is 1.5 basically. The next one is 4/2, which is 2. So we'll do that same idea here. Let me make that -1/2. Okay. Once we have our axes labeled, then we're going to go ahead and sketch in our wave. But before we can sketch in the actual points, please make sure that you're using a color or something to draw your attention to this amplitude up here. The amplitude right here, that's the high and low spot that this graph has to hit. Has to hit those, okay? And the midline, remember, is in between. That's the axes here. So this right here is the midline or the middle. So we have basically a height of 3, a depth of -3, and of course the middle right there that I marked with mid. So we're going to go ahead now and sketch in our graph. Now notice this is a cosine. Remember the key features about cosine is that it starts high. So we're not going to start at 0, 0. We're going to start at the maximum height it can be on the 3. And then we're going to come down through the 1/2, bottom out under the 1. The next mark is 3/2. I'm going to have to hit that one so that I can top out at the 2. So I end in the same place I began. I began at the top and I end at the top, okay? So there's one period of my cosine graph. Now to get the other half, notice I'm starting high. I'm going to have to come back down through the -1/2, bottom out under -1, up through -3/2, and then top out above the -2. So we're going to swing this guy back down. Sketch it in, make sure the arrows come back down because he's going to come back down. And this is 2 periods of that cosine graph, one positive and one negative. So now we can sketch in the domain and range here, or we can fill that in. The domain is all real numbers. And the range is basically what are the y values doing. In this case, it's staying less than or equal to 3. Or greater than or equal to -3, and it greater than or equal to -3, okay? So the y is in between -3 and 3. You can see that visually with the way that compound inequality is set up. So let's take a look at one more. Let's find the amplitude, period, and increment for this one. So this is a little tricky. Here we go. The amplitude. That means that we're going to look right in front, a 2. So we're going to have a maximum wave height of 2. The period is 2 pi divided by 3. If I were to simplify that, 2 pi divided by 3, can I? Because the 3 is the b value, can I simplify 2 pi divided by 3? Not if we don't want a decimal, okay? So this is just going to say 2 pi divided by 3. So now when I go over to the increment, I have to take 2 pi divided by 3 divided by 4. In essence, I got to take 2/3 divided by 4. Leave the pi alone. So if I take 2/3 divided by 4, that's the same thing as 2/3 times 1/4. Either way, you can type those in your calculator either way. So 2/3 times 1/4, if you were to type that into your calculator, or 2/3 divided by 4, you would get 1/6. And again, that had a pi in it, remember? So 1/6 pi. So that's how we're doing these increments. That's how we're going to count them, okay? So let's set up our graph. Y-axis, x-axis. The y has to go up to 2, so I'm going to go 1, 2, put a label on it. -1, -2, put a label on it. And then we're going to label the x-axis. We need to count by the increment 1/6 pi. That's 2/3 divided by 4, or 2/3 times 1/4. That would have been 2/12, which is 1/6. Okay, so 1/6 pi. So the first one's going to be 1/6 pi, or 1 pi over 6. The next one's going to be 2/6 pi. The next one's going to be 3/6 pi. And the next one's going to be 4/6 pi. So we notice, remember that period always has to match where I end up right here. Is that the case? Yeah, 4/6 is the same thing as 2/3. These are the same, so I did number this right. We're okay. And then -1 pi over 6, -2 pi over 6, -3 pi over 6, and -4 pi over 6, which is the same thing as -2/3 pi. Okay? Now let's draw in our amplitude line now that we've done numbering. This is the height that it can reach and has to reach. This is the depth the wave has to reach, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and place our values. Now remember, this is a sine. So sine starts on the midline. Remember where the midline is? Midline, right in the middle, okay? So sine starts there. That means we're going to go ahead and start our first dot at 0, 0. And then from there, sine goes up. Hit the amplitude back down through the midline, bottom out, and come back up. 5 critical points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll sketch it. Arrow, done. And then we'll come back down on the other side here, back up to hit the spot. Okay, hit the x-axis. Then we're going to top out here, and then we're going to come back down. Notice that we start on the midline, we end on the midline. There we go. So there's our 2 periods worth of the sine wave that we're graphing. 1 positive and 1 negative. The domain for this, again, I'm hoping you're seeing a trend. That would be all reals. And then the y values. The y is less than or equal to 2, but greater than or equal to -2. So there we go. The y is in between 2 and -2. So these had both period and amplitude changes. That's the only difference from what we did yesterday, is there's going to be just a little bit more thought up front on this, okay? So I want to thank you for taking good notes, and I'll see you later.